All right, Graham, do you want to take over?
Sure. So hi, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. For those who don't know me, I'm Graham Pollock. I'm the Communications Manager for Can-SOLVE CKD, and joined today, obviously, by Selena Alu, who's our knowledge translation broker for the Can-SOLVE CKD Network. So if you're tuning in today, you're, I imagine, in the same situation as many of us across the country, where you're having to make a sudden transition to working remotely in response to the present situation. And although nobody really knows how long we're going to be doing this, it's pretty clear that this is going to be the new normal. And so I think it's important that we respond to that evolving situation and try to learn from each other and put some best practices together so that we can all get through this time effectively. So this presentation came about as a response to that situation across Can-SOLVE CKD, with our operations team members transitioning to remote work arrangement. And although we have some experience as a national network connecting with each other remotely, we've tried to pool some of those experiences for you and also draw on some other best practices from literature to help everybody hopefully learn a few tips and tricks and make a smooth transition to their new arrangements. So we'd just like to begin by acknowledging that I'm personally today in Vancouver, calling in from the unceded Coast Salish territories of the Musqueam, Tsleil-Waututh, and Squamish peoples. We'd also ask that everyone take a moment to acknowledge the territories across the country from which you are all joining us today. We'd like to remind everyone that we'll be recording today's webinar and posting the link to our YouTube channel. We'll make sure to share that link publicly on our website and social media accounts. And if anybody would like a copy of the slides after this presentation, please feel free to reach out to myself or to Selena for a copy of those. We would love to share them with you. We'd also ask that everyone please mute your microphones during the presentation unless you're speaking. Selena is going to be pausing frequently for questions or comments, and we would also encourage anyone who has questions to type them into the chat window. And so with that, I will turn it over to Selena to get us started.
Thank you, Graham. All right, I'm just going to get my slides here. Give me 1 second. All right. All right, so we are on slide number, is that slide number 2, Graham? All right, so let's move on. We're just going to, so as Graham had mentioned, we're, these are sort of uncertain times. The reason we're really doing this is because this might be our new normal for a while. For those of you who have worked from home periodically, it's going to be very different than when this becomes sort of like your office for a longer period of time. So we're really hoping that some of the best practices and the coping strategies that we talk about today will address most of your concerns. It's not going to, we won't be able to answer everybody's questions and concerns, but perhaps we can all, just learn from some of these best practices and also draw from each other's experience. So we'll have lots of time at the end of this presentation where you can tell us what have been some of the best practices that you use and some of your coping strategies that we could all share and learn from. Next slide, please. We're going to now just do a quick poll. So I don't know if you can see the poll. There we go. All right. So the question that we're going to be asking you today is, can you choose one statement that best applies to you? So you have 3 choices. Let us know if you've never worked from home before, if you have some experience, or if you're very experienced working from home. So we'll just give you a minute to pick your selection. And then you can hit submit. Okay, Graham, let's see if we can see the results of that. Okay, well, this is great. We have the majority of you, 85% of you, say you have some experience working from home. I'm guessing it's only one person who's never worked from home before. And we've got at least maybe a couple people who have got lots of experience. Okay, thank you. Next slide, please. All right. what we would like to find out from the group today is if you could highlight what is one of your biggest challenges working from home. Just one challenge so that we can look at everybody's answers. And if you can type that in the chat window, that would be great. Distractions, finding motivation, staying focused, feeling isolated, focusing on one task, or lots of distraction, sharing space, of course, kids, maintaining a schedule. Not very comfortable for Katie. Finding a quiet space, lack of dedicated workspace. Okay. Children, having to feel productive all the time. Okay. Great. Next slide, please. All right, so these are all very, very valid concerns and challenges that all of us are facing. What we're going to try and do today is now give you a couple of tips. So we would like to start off by on a little bit of a positive note. There are some perks when you are working at home. Right away, I think most of you have noticed that you're saving a lot of time because we're not having to commute to work. And that commute could be anywhere from 10 minutes or 15 minutes all the way up to more than an hour. That is bonus time that you have in your day. And you could use that bonus time for things like maybe sleeping in a little bit. Maybe you could start your day at leisure, get a coffee in bed if you like. Some of you might want to be able to throw in a quick workout. We know that when you're working at home, you're also saving some money because you're not having to pay for gas, you're not having to pay for transit. So that does add up. And of course, that's going to be really, really good for the environment. So most of you've probably heard that the canals in Venice are clear for the first time in decades, right? And that's because they don't have that influx of tourists. Working from home can also be comfortable. And by that, what we mean is it could be comfortable in terms of what you can wear or how you set up your workspace. You can enjoy background music without disturbing your coworkers. And, we're only a few steps away from unlimited amounts of coffee and snacks, okay? That could be a good thing or a bad thing. For our Can-SOLVE CKD network, working from home or at least being able to connect with our coworkers using technology and platforms like Zoom, it's something we've been using for a couple of years. So at least for many of us, it's not a big learning curve and we're quite comfortable with this platform. Working from home also allows you to spend some time with your family and people that you love. Graham and I thought it's also worthwhile mentioning things that we really are grateful for during this uncertain time. We really are fortunate to have supportive managers and coworkers and colleagues. And unlike many people that we know, we still have jobs and we're getting paid. Next slide. The COVID-19 pandemic has caused fundamental changes in the way we work. You're likely working from home and having to navigate a new terrain in terms of how you get your work done, how you're going to collaborate with your teams, and how you perform in the face of new constraints. So many of you mentioned this. For those of us who enjoy going to work and interacting with our coworkers, working from home can be very socially isolating. We really miss the face-to-face interactions that we have with our coworkers. We also do not have access to physical documents that live in our office. And finding these documents online can sometimes be a bit of a challenge, right? I know I needed a refresher in terms of how I can access these shared folders and files. The reason we bring this up is just, it is a reality we're all facing, and just be mindful of this. Don't be too hard on yourself if you can't find these documents right away. Adjust your expectations and your timelines accordingly, and especially if you're requesting these documents from your coworkers or your managers, they're probably facing similar challenges. This came up in the chat in terms of many challenges, these distractions that you have from home, and these distractions could be anything from children to noise to, it's so, we get distracted. Oh, while I'm working, maybe I'll go up and do the laundry or prepare some lunch or dinner. These are very real distractions that we all face, but don't worry, we've got some tips to help you navigate through that. And then, of course, we have this whole notion of, you don't feel as disciplined, and keeping focused on work and feeling productive can feel less urgent during this time of the COVID-19 pandemic, right? You may feel that you lack the same discipline that you would if you were at work. And this is normal. I think everybody goes through that. Next slide, please. So over the next few slides, what we're going to do is highlight some coping strategies to help you keep it together as you're working from home. Again, like we mentioned, these strategies will not work for everybody, but just think of these tips as reminders to help you draw some bright lines between the work you do and the rest of your life. So the first tip that we have for you, and the first thing we recommend, is to try and set working hours and stick to them as much as possible. If you haven't already done this, what you want to do is you want to inform those who need to know that you're working from home and how they can contact you. So I have a tendency to phone my colleagues, just pick up the phone and dial their landline. And I know that's not going to be a reality. And sometimes I only have my co-workers' email addresses. So reach out to them and ask them if you can contact them on your cell phones. What I have done is I've updated my email signature to just let anybody know that I can be reached by email. And I thought for myself, I wanted to put my cell phone there as an option. The other thing we recommend is that you try and set working hours that work for you, that work for your team, and also around your home commitments. I think we're lucky that we have a lot of flexibility from our managers and our teams. So try and find something that works for you. If you're not sure, reach out to your managers. Graham is going to tell you a little bit more about using virtual platforms, but we just want to remind you to be thoughtful in the choice of the virtual platform that you use. So one way that the Can-SOLVE operations team has tried to stay connected in the last 3 weeks, we basically use a collaborative platform called Slack. And we use this during working hours. So as soon as any of us starts our workday, we go online and we turn on our notifications. And this way we know which team members are online and who's working, right? For more social and informal interactions and ways to stay connected with the teams, what we're doing in the operations team is we have a separate chat group and we're using WhatsApp for that. So just find something that works for you and works for your teams. Next slide, please. Establishing a morning routine is another tip that we have for you. If you can manage this, try and get up at a set time every day. It really helps you build a routine and set some boundaries. Now, everybody has a different schedule, and especially if you have children at home, it adds another layer or another consideration that you need to navigate around. The second thing that we want to emphasize is if you can, try and get ready for work. If you don't get ready for the day, your day never really starts. Instead of working from home, it's just going to feel like you're at home with the occasional work check-in. Many of us, I am guilty of this too. I've taken a couple of calls and worked in my pajamas, but getting into more presentable clothes actually helps you switch gears. You never know when you might get asked to join an impromptu video call. As part of your work routine, we also recommend that you schedule some short breaks and again, rely on what works for you. If it's not too cold, go have your breakfast outside, sit on your deck, enjoy some fresh air with a cup of coffee. If you like routine, some people find that preparing and planning their day ahead of time does help. So, preparing your lunches and snacks the night before. So these are just some tips. I'm going to pause before I go to the next slide. Does anyone have any questions? No? All right, let's go on to the next slide. There are a few things that can help you stay organized during this time that you are working from home. I can't emphasize enough, try and rely on your calendar, keep continue with your to-do list. Some people like to use Post-its or whiteboards as places where they can get a quick glimpse of what their day looks like and how to stay organized. If you have an important meeting or a deadline that's coming up, you can use an alarm. This way you will not forget it. You also want to keep your laptops and any other devices that you're using fully charged when you start your workday. It's a good idea to also keep your chargers handy in case you forget to charge your devices the night before. Many of us have experienced this, and there's nothing worse than using Bluetooth headphones that stop working mid-conversation. The other thing you can do to stay organized is make sure that your working tools are also readily accessible. And these working tools could be things like having your pens handy, highlighters, if you like using Post-its. I do. I like to have lots of paper. Keep everything next to you so they're easily available. Now, it is very hard to stay organized if you are sharing your space with children in the house or you don't have a lot of dedicated space. Of course, how you manage this can be a topic and a webinar on its own. But what we want to tell you is that we know that there are lots of resources that are available online for you to access. Please reach out to your colleagues, your coworkers, and even your friends who have been doing this for a while and ask them how they are managing. I think it is okay to make some time for distractions as part of your day. I think this is a reality and we all have to be flexible. So for example, if your children really want to spend time with you during the working day, perhaps you might want to spend your lunch hour with your family, okay? Next slide, please. So I don't have children, and what I did a couple of weeks ago is I reached out to my cousin in New York and I asked her, like, how is she coping? Her husband is working at home, she's working from home, she's got 2 boys, she also has to supervise their homework, and she sent me this picture and the caption reads, "We're having great success with homeschooling." I think what the whole point of this is really to emphasize that they are practical realities about how you can be working and be productive, but also having to juggle your home life. So there are going to be some challenges. Next slide, please. It is very important that you have a dedicated workspace when you're working from home. And the reason we're saying this is because we need to prepare ourselves to adapt to this new normal. It could be a while before we go back to our offices and our usual work environment. The best advice that I got from a colleague was avoid working from the bed or the couch. Basically, you don't want to be working anywhere that allows you to recline if you can help it, right? I mean, for obvious reasons. Where you actually set up shop in your house is entirely up to you. If you have a dedicated office, that's great. Many of us do not. Just try and find a place in the house where you can set up a more permanent workspace, or if you have to move it like a dining table, that you just organize yourself, that every day you could easily move the things that help you be organized or your actual workspace. We're also aware that for many people, they just do not have the luxury of separate rooms or spaces in their homes. The point we really want to emphasize here is the importance of clearly defining a part of your house where work happens. It makes it more likely that you will actually get things done if you go into those spaces. Having a dedicated workspace will definitely help limit distractions, can help create some boundaries, and can help you disconnect when you're not working. Just remember, be flexible and have some options. So for me, I was initially working upstairs in the dining room, but I was just getting too distracted from the noise upstairs when my husband was working. So I moved down to the basement. If I want to enjoy a nice sunny day, I can go back up. So if you can, it's all right to have a couple of options. Next slide, please. Okay, I'm going to hand it over now to Graham for the next couple of slides.
Okay, thanks, Selena. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about some of the technical considerations that are now very much at the forefront with everybody having to work remotely. I think one of the biggest changes that we're all going to have to navigate is that everything that we do now is technology dependent. It's not like being in the office where you can just pop over to a colleague's desk or ask a quick question. Every business function now has a technical aspect to it. And so I think there's a few dimensions we need to consider when we're sort of planning to work around those things. First and foremost, it's quite obvious, I'm sure, but we're at the mercy of our Wi-Fi connections, our phone reception, our laptop batteries, and a few other points of failure. And so for individuals, I think it's helpful to go into your remote work environment with a backup plan for how you will potentially work around some of those glitches that may come up. For example, when Selena and I were connecting on Wednesday to rehearse this webinar, I had a home Wi-Fi connectivity issue that prevented us from starting at the time we had hoped. So contingency plan for today is we both have a copy of the slides, and if my connection were to drop out, she would be able to share and resume, hopefully seamlessly. So, things like that. If you're going into a Zoom meeting and you potentially might have a connection issue, what's the telephone call and details for that call? Do you have a second device available if your reception cuts out? As Selena mentioned, it's a great plan to start your day with freshly charged devices, and it seems like an obvious thing, but you'd be amazed how easy it is to find yourself on a call where your battery is suddenly looking like it's about to drop out. So as much as you're able to plan for that, I think that's one of the tips that I would offer, that give yourself the best opportunity to overcome any technical glitches. I think it's also important, though, that we need to consider as team members that not every glitch that might happen is something that we can work around. And so it's very important that we be understanding and appreciative of the fact that our meetings may not run as smoothly as they would in person, that certain individuals may be unable to join for certain calls. We might have to connect later if there's an issue that needs to be addressed. So I think just giving each other a little bit of flexibility and understanding that technology has some impact on how we're all able to connect right now and navigate these things together. So another consideration on using our technology is tailoring our communications to the correct platforms or the most appropriate platforms for what we're trying to accomplish. As Selena was mentioning, there's a lot of different ways that we connect. For Can-SOLVE CKD, we've got a video conferencing platform via Zoom. We have a teleconference line. We have a sort of group chat for everybody on the team in WhatsApp, and we also are using Slack to facilitate sort of workday connections with our coworkers for quick questions that might require a short response. So there's a lot of options out there, and I think you'll find that there's no one-size-fits-all solution. But with your team, maybe sit down and have a strategy for how best to manage those opportunities to connect. If you need a video conference where slide sharing or file sharing is important, obviously you need to look at something like Zoom or Skype or a few of the other technologies that are out there. For more informal meetings, teleconference is perfectly fine. Again, we would recommend Slack as a great connection tool for coworkers to bounce quick ideas off of each other, but there are a lot of other tools out there, I'm sure, that people can access as well. So to the extent that you're able to have a strategy for tailoring your connections with coworkers to the right platforms, I think that's a really important consideration. I'll also mention that with so many people now depending on their home internet or cell phone plans to maintain their connection to work, it's incumbent on our telecommunications providers to provide some accommodations, and they've fortunately been able to step up and make some adjustments to their service that'll help people smooth the transition. There's so many different providers and so many different offers on the table right now that I'm not going to get into specifics, but I know many have listed on their websites some of the ways that they're responding. That would include waiving data caps, eliminating long distance charges, and offering discounted plans that have unlimited data attached to them. So I would encourage you to reach out to your provider and see what's available and how they might be able to help support you in this time. And just to reiterate, there's a number of collaboration tools out there. So we've talked about a couple, Zoom and Slack. There's also WebEx, which I know many people are familiar with, Skype, Microsoft Teams, FaceTime, Adobe Connect, Google Groups. And although not all of these are free options, some obviously have a subscription cost associated with them. You may find that many of your institutions, whether they're universities or healthcare providers, will have institutional access to some of these tools. And so it's helpful to reach out to your IT departments and see what's available, what you might be able to access for yourself individually or as a team, and what the appropriate steps would be to book those resources or set them up in your own home office environments. And so a final technical note is a reminder that by working off-site, we don't have access to our usual range of IT services. And one of the unseen IT services that we all depend on is the daily or certainly at least weekly backups of our office environments that are ensuring that all of our key files are stored safely, securely, and are accessible in the event of a failure of some form. So it sort of places an additional burden on all of us to become our own IT managers and have a plan in place to ensure the integrity and the security of our data and our key files during this time. I've experienced it, I imagine many of you have as well, that laptop hard drives do fail. And so I think it's best to move forward with the assumption that you may one day need to recover and restore your data and files. And again, one of the key themes that we keep coming back to is there's probably no perfect approach for everybody, no one size fits all solution, but I think that being cognizant of that potential challenge, that risk to your business continuity and being able to work around it is going to be a very important thing. Selena has mentioned that her team at the University of Calgary uses a VPN, a virtual private network, to connect to their server and upload files for backup. For Can-SOLVE CKD, we have a OneDrive shared library where we back up all of our key documents and make those available to team members for remote access. And of course, there are other options out there too, including iCloud, Dropbox, and a few others. I'll just mention one consideration is that many of us working in the academic and healthcare space have considerations around privacy and data storage that we really do need to take seriously. Most of our institutions will be bound by requirements to store data in Canada on Canadian servers. And so it's very important when you're setting up a cloud storage option that you find one that is able to accommodate those requirements. Microsoft in the last couple of years has set up a Canadian data center, and so they are now able to offer Canadian hosting to those who want to take advantage of OneDrive and their other platforms. So that for Can-SOLVE CKD is why we've been able to move forward with that option. And outside of cloud backups, it's important to consider a local backup of your files in case you ever need to restore them. If you have an external hard drive, that's a really good way, quick way to keep a contingency plan or an emergency copy of all of your key work. You can order them online if you don't have one for, you can get a lot of storage now for $100 or less. But even cheaper, a USB stick would be perfectly acceptable for a quick backup. It's not a great long-term solution, but if you just want something that you can have in an emergency to, know that your files are secure, that's one option to consider as well. So again, there's lots of ways to approach this. I think the most important message would just be to have a plan, to expect that you may need to one day work around some of these issues and to know how you're planning to address that. And so with that, I will turn it back over to Selena.
Thanks, Graham. Okay, so I'm just going to pause before we go to the frequently asked questions and just see if anybody has any questions or comments. You will be able to unmute yourself. No? Okay. Heather, would you mind turning on your camera so I could do a quick introduction? There we go. Okay. So everybody, I just want to introduce you to Heather Harris. She is our fantastic Can-SOLVE CKD Network Director. She's been the driving force behind this webinar and getting the information out. So I just wanted, for those of you who've never met Heather or seen her, just so she could do a quick wave and just. Okay, so the reason I bring up Heather at this point in the presentation is a few weeks ago when all of this started and we knew we were going to be working from home, Heather called a meeting together, and she just reminded us that we've been given the gift of time and the ability to work from home. And that got us to sort of reframe our new work environment and what we can do going forward, and how we can support each other, and how we can keep the momentum of the work that we're doing, keep that going. So what we thought we would do is we'd start off this will lead us into the discussion and the Q&A section of today's webinar. But we thought we would look at a couple of frequently asked questions. The first question, well, this was something I was concerned about, and I know people as well, is, we have approved vacation coming up, right? So I've taken some time off in April. I was supposed to go away for 3 weeks in May, and this is all vacation that I have approved. So my question was like, what do we do? Do we take vacation? Are we obligated to take the vacation time? And so what we thought we would, because this is such an individual, it's based on such an individual basis, our suggestion is reach out to your managers and let them know. Some of you may want to take a staycation and stay home and a couple of days off where you're not working. But, if it's anything longer, reach out to your managers. Heather, is there anything you'd like to add to that?
No, I don't think so, Selena. We do have one team member who is taking advantage of that and going to enjoy some vacation and gardening time. So very timely, and just like you said, just talk to your manager and work out what works best.
All right. The other frequently asked question that has come up, and some of us have been working from home now for about 3 weeks, was what do you do when you have chunks of free time, right? And how do I fill up this time? So we decided as a group to sort of brainstorm and come up with some solutions. And initially these started off for our Can-SOLVE operations team, but I think they will be applicable to most of you. So the first thing you can do if you do have chunks of free time, reach out to your coworkers. Just be proactive and ask them if they need some help. Maybe they just need some help in having somebody review a document for them, proofread it, help them source some images for a PowerPoint presentation, right? So reach out. You might be surprised, and people might need some help. For Can-SOLVE CKD, the operations team or the staff has been also reaching out to our patient partners to see how we can support them as well. The other thing you could do if you have some time is try and get an early start on some upcoming deadlines. So we all have some deadlines. I think right now we know we're going to have to be submitting annual reports to CIHR, but also to our institutions. So maybe you can look at the sections that you can fill in and start writing those sections. You can use the free time to also start writing for publication. The Can-SOLVE CKD Network, one of the things that came up with early this year, the leadership really reached out to all the project teams and told them, we really want the year 2020 to be the year of publication. So guys, we have some time. Let's get a head start and start writing. We also have a medical writer that's part of our Can-SOLVE CKD team. So you can reach out to Michelle if you'd like some help in that. If you have some free time, you can also use that to start catching up on some work-related readings, like some articles. Take the Kidney Pro module. If you guys haven't done it, you could do it. Heather reminded us that, some of us, we really need to brush up on our cultural sensitivity training. So for us who have not taken the SANIUS training or the OCAP training, we could do that. You can also brush up on some of your professional skills and take a couple of courses from either LinkedIn Learning. I know lynda.com offers some good courses. A lot of our institutions have some good online courses. I'm not suggesting that you go back to school and take a full-time course load. Just some short kind of professional training courses. It's a good time to do it then. You can also revisit some of your work plans with a little more thought and planning. Like, again, we've been given the gift of time. We have this free time. Why don't we stop, look at our work plans? All our deadlines are shifting. Maybe we can think about what we can bring forward and try and work on. In Graham's wise words, he said, work has to continue. You're going to have to do it eventually, so why not do it now? So take stock of your tasks, look for some gaps, and try and figure out how you can fill your time by addressing some of these things that you're going to have to do eventually. If all else fails and you're just not feeling intellectually stimulated, but you have some time, get organized. Clean out your email folders, right? Your file folders. We never get a chance to do this. Go through your deleted folders and see what you can delete, right? Next slide, please. Okay, this number 3 is me, really. It's something I really grapple with. I miss socializing with my coworkers. The workplace is an incredibly social environment, and when you're working from home and practicing social distancing, you just don't get the same level of daily socialization that you would in the office. And so what we suggest is maybe schedule some check-in calls with your coworkers, right? Like every couple of days, try and reach out to a different person. What you can also do is schedule some virtual coffee breaks. If you take a 10 a.m. coffee break with a few people, reach out to them and set up a Zoom call or a Skype call. If you plan your social calendars in advance, it gives you something to look forward to. And having this active social calendar really goes a long way to keep us sane. A lot of you mentioned productivity as some of the challenges that you face, and this is a very real concern for many of us. The first thing we usually ask if you're not feeling productive is maybe pause and think about that. Like, am I just not feeling productive today? Has it been a couple of days or has it been a week, right? Being able to understand why you're not feeling productive can help you with the solutions that you're looking for. If you're not feeling productive and it's been for a long time, I would say reach out to your managers, right? They probably have some good ideas on some strategies to help you with. Deadlines for in-person meetings and conferences have been canceled, and these delays can stop us from being motivated and getting stuff done. It also increases procrastination. So perhaps all you need to do is reset your work plans and shift some of these deadlines. And also, maybe all you need is some flexibility. Sometimes when you're too hard on yourself, you don't feel as motivated, and that affects productivity. Try and be around people or try and maintain some constant positive conversations. It's a great way to promote morale, and it can also help you maintain your productivity. It's also very important that you switch off at the end of the day. So that's why we go back to that first point that we made. Try and set some work hours. If you have to do 7 hours a week, make sure it's 7 hours a day, make sure it's 7 hours a day, and have a hard stop. Another strategy that can help you with productivity, especially as you are setting meetings in your calendar, is think about scheduling your meetings back to back in blocks of time. And the reason we say this is instead of having your meetings scattered throughout the day, if you have, say, 2 days where you have almost back-to-back meetings, you'll have less chunks of free time in between meetings. And at least for me, those are the moments where I'm least productive. It's like, I don't want to start a new task. I've only got half an hour, or, I've got an hour. Does it make sense for me to start something new? So if you can, try and schedule your meetings back to back. The fifth point is, again, something that many of us have also highlighted as being a challenge now that we're working from home, and that's the information overload. So in addition to the information that you're already actively seeking about COVID-19, you may be flooded with more emails from your networks and the institutions that you work in. We're all trying to respond to a changing environment almost on a hourly basis now. So what we suggest is maybe try and filter the information and prioritize what you look at and what you act on. While you need to stay up to date, be firm about your boundaries and give yourself permission not to follow up on every single non-critical email. Okay? I'm just going to pause to see if anybody has any questions, and then I'm going to hand it over to Graham. Okay, Graham.
Okay, well, I think that what our message to you would be is that, you know, to the extent that we can help support you, we're here, and we are doing our best to maintain, you know, some semblance of normal functioning across the network. As Heather's termed it, we're trying to maintain windows of normalcy in our new environment as we're all navigating this together. You know, again, it'll depend on each individual and each team as to what that support might look like. But we just wanted to reiterate that, you know, first and foremost, we understand that everybody's got a lot of competing obligations and priorities right now. So those who may need to take a step back from their network responsibilities, we completely understand. And you know, as we've been saying, we'll be here when it's time to reconvene at an appropriate time. And for those who are still engaged in their network activities, if we can help support you with, you know, any technical support, you know, we would be happy to discuss, you know, if it's an option for certain teams to need some video conferencing support that isn't otherwise available to them. You know, we'd be happy to have a conversation about potentially sharing our resources with you. And so if you could reach out to one of us, we'd be more than happy to discuss. Also, just wanted to reiterate that our staff are trying to maintain their regular working hours. And, you know, again, as you would imagine in this time, email is probably the best way to get in touch with us. So if you refer to the staff directory on our website, you'll have a full list of all of the team members in our contact, and we'd be more than happy to help with anything that we can. Also just wanted to reiterate that your universities and your host institutions, wherever they may be, will have a lot of support systems to access, whether they're for wellness, you know, mental health, and some of the online professional development opportunities that Selena was referring to as well. So with that, I think we'll wrap it up and just maybe see if there's any questions before we move on.
They were paying attention and clearly trying to have that kind of connection. So why don't we ask them what people would like? I mean, there's no reason why we can't continue with the class plan to have those you know, specific presentations and things that we've been talking about. Really, there's no reason we can't just continue with that. So because the Zoom platform is working really well, and you know, so yeah.
I see one question in our chat window. We've had a question from Helen asking about some of the pros and cons of using Slack. I don't know, Selena, did you have any thoughts on that you'd want to share?
You know, when we were first introduced to Slack as a group, I thought, oh no, another platform. But I really like Slack because it's something that you can log into on your laptop or your desktop. Its features are very easy to use. You can set up separate conversations that you see in your panel, and you can see who is online. I know, of course, there are other platforms that also offer something similar. I think it's just a matter of getting used to the platform. Alicia and I, and then Graham, we tried this last week or a couple of weeks ago, where you can use Slack to do a video call as well. So very similar to like FaceTime or WhatsApp. We really like that. And as Leah pointed out, I can see that in the chat, it's really nice to see who is online. Yeah, I don't know, I get a warm fuzzy feeling when I know who is online. I can just say good morning to somebody from our team, and it is a really good way to stay connected. The cons for me really is just learning a new platform initially, but it wasn't a steep learning curve. Anybody else who's using Slack who might have want to share some experience or some of their thoughts?
I'll just reiterate most of what Selena mentioned. It is a really great way to connect with your colleagues. It's got some really great embedded features, like your ability to make calls via Slack, to share files. So it can almost in a way sort of replace internal email and a lot of the sort of intra-team communication that you might be doing in a normal office environment. So again, it's also free. I think there are some paid features to access, but the basic functionality that you can get with a free account is quite rich and offers a lot of very useful features. The one downside, I would echo what Selena said. It's not. It's potentially, it's first of all the need to learn a new platform, but it's also the need to adopt that in your workflow with other colleagues. I know for us across Can-SOLVE CKD, we had a bit of a slow uptake in terms of people getting into the habit of checking Slack on a daily basis and staying logged in throughout the day and being able to make themselves available for questions coming in from our offsite team members. So, you know, having a policy or a plan, I guess, for how you're going to use that within your team would help manage some of that transition, I suppose. But otherwise, yeah, I'd say for Can-SOLVE, it's been a very positive experience.
Rachel just typed something in the chat window. She said they're upgrading Slack for nonprofits for free for the next 3 months. So thank you, Rachel. Yeah, you know, in light of everything that's happening, there are a lot of businesses and providers that are really stepping up and trying to make to support you know, people that are working from home or having to connect with family virtually. So there are going to be a lot more options for sure. Thank you for the link, Rachel. I thought maybe we could ask a few people who are on this call who are juggling the tasks of working as well as being a parent. Does anybody have any tips or any resources that you would like to share with us? Terry, I know you're on the call and you have 2 little girls at home. Eleanor, I know as well, has got 2 children. Any thoughts? I don't mean to put you 2 on the spot, but you might have some tips or some suggestions.
I don't really have any tips quite yet. But I think the most important thing is you have to it's a trial and error thing. And I know we've been playing around with that. We've just been home 2 weeks. So, you know, like last week I was trying to work 3 full 7-hour days, and it was a disaster. My husband was ready to walk out because he just couldn't handle the kids in the school. And so this week we're trying something different. You know, I'm trying to work 5 days a week, 4 hours, 4 to 5 hours every day. So I think what we have to give ourselves is the ability to, you have to try different things and you have to see what fits for you and for your family. And that just might take time. And every week it's something new. So I think we have to give ourselves permission that we don't have to be committed, but that we must be flexible and that we can try different things. If something doesn't work, try something else or go back to it. So I think that's probably the most important thing is giving ourselves permission to do it. And I think a lot of people are very dedicated in their work and in their style. And now this is something very new, so.
Thank you, Eleanor.
Yeah, I agree. Flexibility is a huge thing. I know for myself, my husband's schedule changes week to week, so it's not, I need to be flexible week to week too when I can actually get things done. And for me, it's really important to make sure I get up before the kids, have a few hours to kind of get the things I need to pay the most attention to, and get that out of the way so that other things that it can be a little bit more flexible with interruptions throughout the day.
Thank you, Terry. Anyone else? Any thoughts, comments, some good tips? Leah?
So I saw a comment about Zoom bombing, and my question is that the same as like photo bombing? So when family members, kids in particular on the topic, bomb your Zoom? So Heather, is that what you're talking about? Guidance on Zoom?
That would be the good. That would be the good side of Zoom bombing. There's been some security issues with Zoom lately that have been in the news, with hackers hacking into a Zoom account and taking over a presentation. So yeah, just what we need right now, right? So that was my question to anybody, if they've got any tips on avoiding that. I'm not sure, but the good side of Zoom bombing is quite fun, actually, with kid pictures and dogs and cats bombing in. Yeah.
And that's what I kind of wanted to say, just in general too, around the whole, like, you know, parent piece, is that, like, we're all in the same situation, and I think being just radically authentic in that space, so that when kids and spouses and pets, you know, get into your camera frame, that's okay, and not to feel embarrassed about that, because we're absolutely all in that same situation. Absolutely, it's the flexibility piece, and I think we are always our own worst critics. So any pressure that I think many of us are feeling is usually placed on ourselves by ourselves. So just acknowledging that and being kind and gentle, because we're trying to keep some normalcy. The rest of the world and our lives are not normal. So again, that compassion towards ourselves during these weird times. And beware hackers to your Zoom. Not yet, thankfully.
That's a very good reminder. I have just noticed another great tip from Rachel. She says, make use of the password feature on Zoom as a first step to protect your call from hackers. So, excellent tip. I'm also assuming that, you know, when we did the poll in the beginning, I think at least one person said that they were a pro at working from home. I wonder if this is Rachel. Rachel, are you able to unmute your microphone? Oh, it wasn't Rachel.
No, it wasn't me, but I've had to learn quickly.
Yeah. Thank you for the tips. Have you had any problems with hackers using Zoom?
No, not personally, although I have heard of it. It's from what I hear, it's more common in the accounts that are personal. If there's an institutional account, those are often encrypted. Those are a little bit more secure. So just things to keep in mind when you're talking about the specifics of your projects, or maybe about the people involved, that you should not use the free personal version of Zoom.
That's a very good advice. Thank you. All right. Anyone else? Are there any other questions or challenges that we weren't able to address? I'm just going to go back, but I will open the floor if anybody has any other thoughts or comments, questions. Oh, focus. Kids came up a lot. Okay. So maybe what we could do, we've got another sort of 5 minutes left. We will, as Graham mentioned, we will make this information available. If anybody would like us to connect again as a group, or you have some topics that you would like us to bring forth in a similar sort of learning opportunity or a webinar, you know how to reach any one of us. We definitely want to stay connected with the team. We want to continue to support all of you as much as we can. So please reach out and stay in touch. Stay safe. And if there are no more questions, oh, Heather.
Hi, thanks, Selena. I just want to say a huge thank you to you and Graham for putting this webinar together. I think it was really, really useful. I've seen a lot of comments come through the chat about how great it's been. So kudos to you and Graham, and thank you so much for doing this. It's great.
Our pleasure. Okay. Well, everybody, happy Friday. Graham, any last thoughts, comments?
No, I think just as Selena mentioned, if you'd like a copy of the slides, we're going to post along with the recording to the Can-SOLVE website. It'll appear in the news section within the next day or so. And feel free to reach out to Selena or myself if you'd like one of those PDFs emailed to you directly, or if you have any questions or anything that we can help to follow up on.
Okay.
Thanks, everyone. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday, everybody.